Hi, this is Professor Hui. I'm teaching a class on green cloud computing. I'm a professor at Arizona State University. I'm also the president of a number of companies listed here. One of the companies is by the name of Virtuon that provide cloud computing services. Now, the basic question is, what is the cloud? And how big is the cloud? Are you doing cloud computing yet? And the answer very likely is yes, you're doing the cloud computing for yourself without knowing about it. So to the individual person like you and me, what exactly is the cloud? Now, if we talk about personal computing, we primarily are talking about individuals owning personal computers that you can do all your web processing, internet access, or other sorts of applications such as spreadsheet computing on your personal computer. If I talk about corporate computing, very often you can see people going into a company whereby they have their desktop and they will be able to get to the databases or go to the internet or through their corporate network. And these corporate networks very often are in-house small data centers for which they would have switches, routers, they have storage area networks, and also they may have a lot of servers doing all sorts of applications, and also they would have Ethernet that go out to the internet to connect to the internet. So that's corporate computing. So when we're talking about cloud computing, what exactly is it? Well, we're talking about computing in the cloud. So the question is, what is the cloud? Now, when you talk about the cloud, most of us associate the cloud with the internet. So cloud computing is a result that a lot more people are getting on the internet these days. And more people are getting on the internet through mobile devices such as the iPad. And as you're aware of, the amount of storage and also the amount of memory, the amount of application software that you can load onto the iPad is rather limited. So very often people would like to store their files such as the Word file or the PowerPoint file, or to store their pictures, store videos either through Amazon or through Google or even through Apple iCloud. And so a lot of things that you practically have done cloud computing because you're uploading things onto the network so that the network will store these things for you. And also, people are beginning to see these mobile computing devices as a virtual desktop. So you don't need to really run the entire desktop operating system, but yet you have the benefit of desktop computing whereby the desktop is server is residing somewhere in the cloud. So also there are people who are providing cloud computing services so long you use these mobile computing devices to connect. For example, lawyers may be able to get legal documents in the cloud, or medical doctors may be able to get medical records on the cloud. So this is personal cloud computing. Here I'm in the data center of Virtuon, one of my companies providing cloud services. What you see here are racks of IT resources, and you have switches on the top, multiple switches. We actually have 4 of them. We also have data storage devices here, and also here storing tens of terabytes of data and almost hundreds of terabytes of data. Also, we have multiple servers as well as a host of wires that goes to the individual end users in the company. Also, there are high-speed Ethernet going out to the telephone companies. So what we have here is very expensive equipment that we have to use all by ourselves, but we're also providing cloud computing services for people outside so that they can use these resources on demand. Now what you see here is basically that these machines use up a lot of power, and what we find, in order to cool these things, we really have to have powerful air conditioning units to cool directly the equipment. So cloud computing is very important so that we use fewer of the physical resources, whether they are disk drive, servers, or switches, and place it in the cloud. And it's known that cloud computing can reduce power consumption by 80% because of sharing. So how big really is cloud computing? I think it's really, really big, and everybody's doing that, including those people who are engaged in corporate IT computing, or individuals who access their files and applications on the internet through mobile computing devices. Here I would like to talk a little bit about the history of cloud computing, particularly the precursors to cloud computing. To start with, in the 60s, you have at MIT the development of timeshare computing through the development of the Multics operating system. Now the Multics operating system eventually become the foundation for the Unix operating system that is adopted by the Linux Foundation, as well as most modern mobile computing operating system use a variation of the original Unix operating system. Now, in the 70s, the internet was developed, and in the 80s, you have personal computing being developed, and a good part of that was the personal computer eventually evolved to do communication as well through things such as email or through the World Wide Web towards the end of the 1980s or the early 1990s. So with that, we are starting to get into cloud computing. And since the year 2000, cloud computing has become very popular through many different applications as developed on the internet. Now, there are also other forms of computing, such as grid computing or utility computing, and two forms of computing these two forms of computing are very similar to cloud computing. Now I'm going to describe them in the next few lectures. So today I would like to talk a little bit about the course outline for Green Cloud Computing. Effectively, this is a course that I teach at the King Abdulaziz University over a 4-day period. So on day one, we're going to talk about cloud computing basics, what it is and not or not. I'm going to define the service layers as well as the business model for cloud computing. The second day, I'm going to focus on computer virtualization. What is virtualization and what can be virtualized? Here I talk about on day two, the virtual machines, or the virtual servers, virtual desktop, as well as virtual storage and virtual memory. Now, the description of virtualization extends into the third day when I talk about network and applications virtualization. When it comes to a network, first of all, we are virtualizing the computer input output, or the so-called I/O virtualization. And then we're going to go on to talk about switch as well as network virtualization. And very important aspect are the virtualization of different kinds of applications on the internet. The final, the fourth day, we're going to talk about green cloud computing and applications. We're going to talk about how one could market cloud computing and what is the business culture or business model that one can use to promote within their organization cloud computing. I'm going to also talk about some aspects of green cloud computing in terms of the use of solar energy, the use of water, and also the idea that cloud computing can be made mobile. And finally, I would like to describe the future development of cloud computing, and I believe the sky is really the limit for cloud computing.